On April 3rd, 2026, a man near Thamesville, Ontario saw something black and 7 feet tall step out of the trees and look at him and walk away. The next day, in the same town, somebody else saw the same kind of thing. Cinnamon colored this time, same height, same silent exit. Day 3, a witness heard wood knocks, and his dog went completely rigid before he ever saw the thing. Same area within 3 days. 3 sightings. And if you've been paying attention the month earlier, you already knew what was happening. Because 30 days before Thamesville, it happened in Ohio. 6 sightings in 4 days. Mantua, Garrettsville, Windham. And when you trace the line from Ohio to Ontario on a map, the direction line almost lines up perfectly. Something is moving. Nobody's saying where from, nobody's saying where to, and the news cycle has already moved on. So let me walk you through what I actually found, and then you tell me whether it's feasible or not. Andrew here for Permanent Underclass, where we explore the weird stuff your therapist would tell you to avoid. The, oh cool, now I'll never sleep again side of reality. If you're easily scared, easily offended, or easily anything, you're probably in the wrong place. All right, let me back up and explain what we're actually dealing with here. The cryptid research, Bigfoot research here, this thing is called a flap. A flap is when you get a concentrated burst of sightings, same creature, same small area, inside a short window of time. Not one guy, not one thing, not one time. Multiple people, multiple days, same zone. That's a flap. They're rare. They matter. They're what researchers pay attention to because it's hard to explain away as one prank, one bad photo on a camera, one experience of one person, right? Because it's happening to multiple people. March 6th through March 10th, 2026, Northeast Ohio, southeast of Cleveland. 6 separate reports of tall, dark, bipedal creatures. 6 to 10 feet, dark brown to solid black. Witnesses included hikers, a researcher standing in a field in broad daylight, a man walking his dog at 4 in the morning. The sightings ran in the line from Mantua Center all the way through Garrettsville, through Windham, and eventually crossed into Trimble County. That's not random, that's a trajectory. Southeast, later reports, published to the total of 8 sightings within those 5 days. And when the local paper called the Portage County Sheriff's Office about it, they said there was nothing going on in their logs filed as an official report, so no paper, no anything, nothing happened. 30 days later, in southwestern Ontario in Canada, Thamesville, along the Thames River corridor, April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. 3 credible sightings in 3 consecutive days. The same physical description, 7 to 8 feet tall, black, cinnamon-colored fur. Witnesses report footprints, wood knocks, an unearthly, musky smell hanging in the air. In the 3rd sightings, the witness's dog alerted before he saw anything, which, if you know, the literature is a detailed thing that comes up. Dogs know before humans. Bigfoot mapping project, actual researchers had people on the ground in Thamesville within days. They called it a cluster. They called it worth paying attention to. They pointed out that the Thames River corridor has a history of these reports going back years. And they said publicly that something is happening in that area. People who do this for a living on record saying out loud that something is happening in Ontario right now. Now, here's where I start to lose my patience, because if you zoom out, really zoom out on the map, Ohio to Ontario, you'll see that the line from Mantua to Thamesville isn't random either. It's a continuation, southeast, east-southeast, out of Ohio, across Lake Erie, into southwestern Ontario. It's the same direction, 30 days apart. And when I sat down and actually looked at this at 2 a.m. with a calico cat trying to close my laptop on me, because of course she was, I realized nobody was connecting the two. Ohio stories faded. The Ontario stories are still fresh, and nobody, not one outlet, has put them side by side. Let me start with Ohio. Here's what we know. March 6, 2026, 12:23 in the afternoon, a researcher is standing in a field near Mantua Center. Across the field, at about 120 yards, something tall, covered in brown hair, locks eyes with him. Midday. Somber. He's a normal guy doing work in the woods. Not at night. He's not drunk. He's not anything. He's just working in the woods. Normal guy. Over the next 4 days, 5 more people in the same area describe the same kind of thing. Just different colors, different heights, but all tall, all bipedal, all in the same corridor. What do they want us to believe? The sheriffs pulled their logs and said there's nothing in there. No formal report. The framing from the skeptics went like this. Social media created the flap. One post blew it up. Other people wanted in on the attention, and suddenly there's 6 reports appeared. Classic contagion, classic hysteria. There's nothing to see here. That's the official report. But what if that's not what actually happened? What if the post didn't create the flap, but instead the post finally gave people a place to report something that they actually did see? What if the reports existed because the sightings existed, and the reason they didn't go to the sheriff is because nobody called the sheriff and said, hey, I saw Bigfoot. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. You know what happens when you do that? Your neighbors stop inviting you to their barbecues. You lose your job. You don't call the cops. You post on Reddit at 1 a.m. and you hope somebody believes you. So how do you explain 6 people in 4 days describing the same thing, the same corridor, when none of them talk to each other before reporting? You don't. That's the point. The contagion theory needs them all copying each other. But the descriptions came in before the posts went viral, which means that the timeline is broken. You can't copy something you haven't seen yet. Here's what I think. Ohio saw something real. Multiple witnesses, same window, same corridor, same direction of travel, a migration maybe. The official explanation requires you to believe 6 different people independently hallucinating all at the same time, which doesn't happen. And the same thing just happened to all of them, and they all described the exact same thing. That's not an explanation. That's a dismissal dressed up as an explanation, basically, is what they're saying. They're saying that they hallucinated. Now, in Ontario, April 3rd, about a month later, in Thamesville, we see something black, 7 feet tall, standing at the edge of the tree line. It looks at him, walks into the woods, no sound, gone. Next day, April 4th, 4:35 in the afternoon, somebody else, different witness, same town, sees a cinnamon-colored figure crossing a rural path. Walks past, the witnesses report a strong, earthy, musky smell in the air. And then after that, a third sighting. A guy walks with a dog. The dog goes stiff. The fur goes up on the edge. The dog is locked on something in the tree. Then the wood starts knocks. Then the guy sees it. What's the official story? There isn't actually one. That's the thing. The Canadian media covered it very lightly. A few outlets picked it up. No agencies made a statement. There's no Sky Canada Project report on it. The default explanation, same as Ohio, is that somebody saw a bear, somebody else saw a trick of light, and then everybody jumped on the bandwagon and copied each other. But what if the Thamesville flap is the Ohio flap? What if it's not 2 of separate events, but one event, one migration, 30 days and 400 miles apart? What if something moved east, southeast, same bearing, same corridor, same style, geography, river valley, Ohio's woods to Ontario's? That's not crazy. That's what migration looks like. Large animals move seasonally, directionally, in patterns you can track if you actually bother to track them. So, how do you explain 30 days, 2 flaps, one direction, same physical description, and not one person in mainstream news media is drawing a line here. How does that happen? It happens because we've decided as a culture that the question isn't worth asking. We've decided that Bigfoot is a punchline, and the second you decide something is a punchline, you stop looking. You stop connecting the data and you stop asking, hey, is there a pattern here? You just stop asking the questions. Here's what I think. I think Ontario and Ohio are the same story. A single movement observed in two places a month apart. The trajectory matches, the description matches, the behaviors match. Avoid humans, move at dusk or midday when cover is thick, cross corridors that have trees all the way through. This is what I found. The Bigfoot Mapping Project says on the record that the Thames corridor has been considered a potential habitat zone for years. Researchers in Ohio said the Ohio movement runs east-southeast. Put those two facts next to each other and you don't need anything else. The direction on the map is just, it's there. Something moved. Now let me talk about the dog thing, because this is where the skeptics stop skepticking and the hair goes up on the back of my neck. Fact. In sighting after sighting, not just Ohio and Ontario, but going back decades, the dog alerts before the human sees anything. Dog stops, dog growls, the fur goes up along the spine, and the dog refuses to move forward. And then seconds after, the human catches up, sees something in the tree line. That happened in Thamesville, sighting number 3. It happened in 100 of Pacific Northwest reports going back 50 years. Dogs know first. They're the first ones to see. What do they want us to believe? Dogs bark at squirrels. Dogs bark at deer. Yes, that's true. Dogs bark at nothing. Rural dogs spook easily. It's nothing. That's what they want us to believe. But I don't believe that. What if dogs are picking up something we can't? Lower frequencies, a smell we don't register. We know their noses are stronger than ours. Their sense of smell is better than ours. A presence, infrared sound, subaudible vibrations in the earth. Vibrations is real, it's been studied, and it triggers exactly the same kind of fear response dogs are showing in the reports. Large animals, big cats, other primates, they all produce infrasound. What if the reason the dog freezes is because something is in its inner ear, like just lit up? And what if the reason the human doesn't react until later is because humans aren't wired and aren't able to hear the same thing or smell the same thing? How many dog alert reports do you need before you actually take it serious? 100, 1,000? Because I think we're past that. We've been past that for decades. The pattern is in the literature. It's repeatable, it's consistent, and the mainstream explanation that dogs bark at stuff. That's not an explanation. That's closing your eyes, I'd say. Here's what I think. The dog alerts matter. They're a cross-witness, cross-continent pattern, and they line up with a known physical phenomenon. Infrasound exists. Large unknown bipedal primates hypothetically would produce them. The dogs are behaving exactly the way they would if infrasound were being emitted. That's 3 pieces of evidence stacking. I'm not saying dogs prove Bigfoot. I'm saying that they prove something is there. And that something in Ohio and in Ontario behaves the same way that a Sasquatch would. If this kind of rabbit hole is what you're here for, do me a favor, like and subscribe. And if you want more of this, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at Permanent Underclass and on X at The Underclasser. I post stuff there that always doesn't make it to YouTube. All right, back to the flap. Here's a piece that nobody's actually touching. In 2025, Ontario led the entire country of Canada in UFO reports. 307, more than Quebec, more than British Columbia. Ontario had the most unexplained sky activity in the country. And the Thamesville corridor, Thames River, southwestern Ontario, is right in the middle of that province. Now, in the United States, the Pentagon has been under pressure to release the UAP data for years. That pressure has only gone up. There are active government inquiries into unexplained aerial phenomenon on both sides of the border. Canada launched something called Sky Canada, a project specifically to handle the surge. What do they want us to believe? UFOs are UFOs, Bigfoot is Bigfoot, two separate things. Don't mix them up, don't cross them. UFO people stay in one lane, cryptid people stay in another lane, and the two shall not meet, because that is when you end up with a weird shelf at a bookstore. What if they're not separate? What if the reason you get a cluster of unexplained activity in one region, both skies and ground, is that unexplained activity is unexplained activity and it's happening, and we've artificially split it into two categories to make it easier to dismiss? What if Ontario has a Bigfoot problem and the UFO problem for the same reason? What if one is related to the other? What if something in the sky is pushing something on the ground into a new area, a new corridor? I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm just asking, what if? What are the odds that the province with the highest UFO activity in Canada also produces a credible 3-day Bigfoot flap along a river corridor, the same month as a matching flap in Ohio, 400 miles south? What are the odds of that? Go and run them all. Wait. Here's what I think. I think correlations don't prove cause, but in research, correlations are where you start looking. The official stance is there's nothing to look at. I look at Ontario's numbers, 307 UFO reports in 2025 alone, most in the country. And I look at Thamesville, 3 sightings in 3 days. I look at Ohio, 8 sightings in 5 days. On an east-southeast heading, which is the same heading directly. And I think somebody somewhere should at least be asking whether these things are related. Because if they are, we have something much bigger than a Bigfoot flap. And if they're not, at least we've ruled it out. Either way, an answer would be useful. The current answer, which is don't look, is not useful. It's the opposite of useful. Last piece of evidence, the silence. Here's a fact. 2 flaps 30 days apart on the same directional heading across international border. Not one major outlet has framed them as a single story. The Ohio coverage ran for about a week and faded. The Ontario coverage is still trickling out, but nobody has published the map with both sets of pins on it side by side. That's the fact. What do they want us to believe? There's no story to cover. These are small local curiosities. One flap in Ohio is a local Ohio thing. One flap in Ontario is a local Ontario thing. They don't even talk to each other. The news cycle's moved on. As simple as that. What if this silence itself is the story? What if the reason nobody puts these two events together is because of the framing that Bigfoot is a joke? So the strong, serious reports won't touch it. They won't touch that, even when the data lines up. What if our cultural embarrassment about the topic is literally keeping us from seeing a pattern that's sitting on the map in plain view? What if the reason you have to hear this from a guy on YouTube late at night instead of from CBC or, a credible news source is because the Times or the credible news source won't risk its profession hitting and covering this seriously? Does that sound familiar? Does that sound like every other thing because we've been told not to look at until the government finally admits 20 years later that, yeah, we were wrong, or yeah, this thing happened? People were seeing something the whole time. UAP, anybody? Remember when that was the punchline? Here's what I think. The silence is neutral. It's active. It's a choice that we keep making as a culture to dismiss instead of investigate. Ohio had a flap. Ontario had a flap. The directions line up. The descriptions line up. The behaviors line up. A credible research organization said publicly that something is happening in the Thames corridor. And the overall response from people paid to pay attention to has been a collective shrug. That's what I found. That's what I think is actually going on. The flaps aren't the weird part. The fact that nobody in mainstream media puts them together is the weird part. So, if you do something for me, pull up a map on Google, drop a pin in Mantua, Ohio, drop another pin in Thamesville, Ontario. Look at the lines between them. East-southeast out of Ohio, across Lake Erie, into southwestern Ontario. Now look at the dates. March 6th through March 10th in Ohio, April 3rd to April 5th in Ontario. 30 days, one direction, two flaps. You're not crazy for thinking that looks like a pattern. You're not crazy for thinking somebody should be asking about it. You're not crazy for thinking the silence is the loudest part of this story. You've been picking up on something mainstream media has been trained to ignore. And now you've got the map to back it up. Whether you call it a creature, a cryptid, a migration, something we don't have a name for yet, something moved. Ohio saw it first, Ontario saw it next. And if that pattern holds, the next flap is already on its way somewhere northeast of Thamesville. Quebec, New England, the Maritimes. Somebody in the next 30 days is going to walk out of their house and see something tall at the edge of the woods. And when they do, they're going to be told the same thing that we were told in Ohio and Ontario, which is nothing happened. You saw a bear, move on. But you'll know, you've been watching the line. If this kind of content keeps you up at night, do me a favor, like and subscribe. And if you want more of this, follow us on TikTok and Instagram at permanent_classer. We post stuff that doesn't always make it to YouTube.